Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast, where we're all about commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz and I'm joined by my fantastic co-host. He heard that legendary spacecraft and legendary vehicles can now be your commander. And now whenever he plays those decks, you'll probably hear him whispering to himself, vroom, vroom, near. It's Matt Morgan.
So, Joey, you know how we recently went to Los Angeles together? We got to go out there for a little bit. Yeah. I snuck away for an afternoon and went on one of those star tours. You saw everybody's houses of all these famous people. Mm-hmm. Turns out there's a house right between a Hallmark store and Dwayne Johnson. And turns out you can live between The Rock and a card place.
Wow. You know what, Matt? One thing that I've learned after all these years of doing the show together, you know what I've learned is that no amount of therapy will fix this. Anyway.
That got dark really quick.
I
didn't have a follow-up joke, but I don't even want to do it anymore.
I mean it with love. I truly do. I mean it with all the sarcasm and love in the world. Anyway, Matt, it's the two of us on this week's episode, and we're talking about some trending commanders.
We are, yeah. So recently, EDHREC rolled out a brand new tool to track popularity of any given commander over the course of time. This is such a sweet tool. We get emails all the time asking, I want to see historical trends of these commanders. Well, now you can, and it is super fun. It's so cool to see these journeys of commanders. And yeah, we just want to talk about some of these trends that we've noticed and some eye-popping commanders and just that have jumped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, we're showing off EDHREC's new popularity history feature, which you can find in the charts tab on a commander's page, which shows off the past year of data by default, but you can extend it to see the past 2 years of data for that commander and where that commander ranked in the popularity, how much it was built every single month. And in this episode, what we want to do is take a look at some of the commanders who most recently have been experiencing a little bit of a spike in popularity and try and figure out why it is that they're trending right now.
There's so much to digest because now you have all this information for all these commanders, and I'm super excited to get into this, Joey. This tool is probably one of my favorite new things that we've rolled out in quite a while over at EDHREC.
Let's dive right into it. Let's take a look at our first commander that is trending and spiking up in popularity right now. Matt, we've got Marneus Calgar here, which is an Esper 5-mana 3/5 Astartes warrior with double strike. You may remember this one from the Warhammer precons. It has the ability Master Tactician. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, you draw a card, and you can pay 6 mana to create 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance. What does the data show here for how this commander is trending and spiking up?
Well, so this commander is actually a really interesting case because it has spiked up not just once, but twice in the past 2 years. If you look back on the chart back in July, even of last year, it was in, 130s. It wasn't anything super overwhelmingly popular, but it also hadn't really faded. But around the time that Duskmourn came out, it actually jumped up to the number 62 slot, which is a pretty good jump. Then it slumped down a little bit. And then as of when we're recording right now, it's number 56 in the past 2 years. It's quite a popular commander. It just keeps surging and won't go away. And for an Esper commander, you kind of need it to go away. Otherwise, it's going to win the game with how many cards you draw with Marneus.
Yeah, it does draw so many dang cards. It really does. That effect, drawing a card whenever one or more tokens hit your field. Well, there are a lot of things that like to make a lot of treasures, a lot of 1/1s. So it's a very potent ability. And I'm glad that it's getting its flowers. As you said, now here in July, it is the number 56 most popular commander to be built this month. That doesn't mean the number 56 overall, but just like it has been rising in the monthly rankings. And yeah, as you noted, there have been a couple of spikes across this commander's history. It spiked up in Duskmourn, and it's spiking up again right now. I feel like when we're asking why is the commander experiencing a spike up currently, this recent trend of it going up in the rankings, I feel like Dragonstorm and the mobilize mechanic has a lot to do with this.
I think that's definitely playing a factor, but that doesn't explain why Duskmourn, it saw such a jump up in popularity too. That's the interesting part to me is there's not just one, but there's 2 waves of popularity that we kind of have to factor in here. And the Duskmourn one is so much harder for me to piece together because Duskmourn didn't really have a whole lot of token forward strategies that you might expect with Marneus Calgar that just all it depends on is making a bunch of tokens to draw a bunch of cards.
Well, Matt, so I did some digging because I was also curious. And turns out that time period around Duskmourn's release in September of last year, that also coincides with the commander bans that happened last year.
That is true.
And when Dockside Extortionist was banned, that represented a major shift for everyone. But for CEDH players especially, folks started looking around for a new commander or strategy to take over the top spots, since that was such a huge upset in that end of the format. And my understanding from CEDH friends is that Marneus Calgar became a huge contender for a new top commander at that time.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. And then in present day, the surge around the time of Dragonstorm more recently, the mobilize mechanic from the Mardu faction with various creatures making a token here and there whenever you attack, that represents a lot of extra possible triggers for various Marneus decks out there. Not to mention a bunch of other new cards that care about making tokens in that set too. Plus a whole Token Matters precon in Mardu, which shares 2 colors of overlap with Marneus Calgar being in Esper, which probably also served to boost up his numbers just on the more social or casual side of things. So all in all, it's really neat to see the competitive and casual reasons that Marneus would get more love across time, because his ability is really potent and the support pieces he's gotten have been really cohesive.
Yeah, well, and if you want some more insights too on specific surges like this, so there's a whole bunch of commanders that do things like this. There's actually a new article series. One of our data scientists, Julia Maddalena, who she's done some amazing work. If you remember our heat maps episodes that we've done recently, anything that we do that's data forward, it's probably coming from Julia. Well, thankfully, she's blessing us with a whole bunch of her knowledge too. So if you want to check out her article series, they are so in-depth and so analytical about all these things and all these trends that you might be seeing. And just seeing it from a data scientist point of view is so fascinating for me to read.
Absolutely. We'll have that linked in the description, so take a look at that. That is the Fire and Ice article series on EDHREC. And what's great is that she's not just taking a look at the commanders and why commanders are trending, but also she's covering the stuff that is going to be in the 99 of those decks too. So you get to see which cards are hot right now within the decks. So if you want to take a closer look at Marneus Calgar, she just had an article on Marneus. By the time this episode comes out, it will have been published just that past week. So you can go take a look at that one. Again, it will be linked in the description. Go send Julia some love. She does amazing, amazing work.
Yeah, well, Joey, we have some more commanders that we want to talk about. But first, let's get some plugs out of the way. We've got to pay the bills after all. And then we'll get back into all these surging commanders.
Heck yeah. Up first, this episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield, the makers of the finest and most durable card sleeves, including our very own EDHREC sleeves. And again, there's a link to that in the description as well. And anywhere on Dragon Shield, you can enter code EDHREC, all lowercase, for 5% off of your order. Those sleeves are really, seriously, so amazing. Their inner sleeves are also really good. Matt, you've been teaching me to double sleeve more often. And
Teaching you the ways of the double sleeve?
Yes.
I mean, you have to. You have expensive cards. Anybody who has expensive cards, like, you don't want to be like a tipped over bottle of soda away from having all those cards ruined. So double sleeving is just mandatory for me, just because, and I like the feel of a double sleeve deck. And so Dragon Shield just has the best inner sleeves. They fit so nicely around it. They just give it a nice shuffle feel. I will never go back.
Yeah, so again, click the link in the description, and that's code EDHREC, all lowercase, for 5% off your order on Dragon Shield's website. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show.
Well, and if you would like to support the show directly, there's a lot of ways that you can do that, whether it's subscribing on YouTube, which we just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much. Everybody out there, you gave Joey his birthday present, and it wasn't even his actual birthday. His birthday's not till next month.
I know, it was so cool.
Either way, thank you so much to all of our subscribers helping us hit 100,000. It's such a cool thing. Just thank you, everybody out there. But if you would like to do something else for us, you can head over to patreon.com/EDHRECast and get yourself a little something in exchange for supporting us over on Patreon. Whether you want to see all of our historic challenges, stats picks, you want to see our patron-only Discord, or you just want to see some of the patron exclusive content, all of that and more over at patreon.com/EDHRECast, including the coveted weekly patron shout out that we did not prepare for currently, and we'll pull up a name right now.
Do you want me to leave that in?
Sure. And this week, a very special shout out to Ryan Mounts, who showed more than an ounce of Get Up and Go and subscribed over at patreon.com/EDHRECast. So Ryan, thank you so much for all of your support. And thank you everybody over at Patreon. Thank you for subscribing. Just thank you to all of our supporters, because we truly could not be doing it without all of you out there.
Yeah, it's a fantastic milestone. We're So happy and excited and very, very grateful to everyone out there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Matt, now let's get even further into our topic here. We mentioned our first trending commander and what might have caused Marneus Calgar to spike up. But also, we've got another small group of commanders that we want to cover here real quickly that all have something in common with why they are trending too.
Well, the thing is kind of a no-brainer when you think about the set that just came out, as in the most popular set of all time and the best-selling set of all time, which is Final Fantasy. This set has made just so many impacts on the format, whether it's people building all the commanders. But there's 3 commanders here that we're going to talk about that all 3 of them have seen very distinct impacts because Final Fantasy is supplying so much in terms of what goes into the 99 that interest in these 3 commanders has seen a resurgence lately.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like, it's neat to see the Final Fantasy commanders that are trending and whatever, but seeing other commanders that have been reactivated and driving a lot more excitement towards them because of recent sets is really fascinating. Our first one here is Sisay Weatherlight Captain, which is the 2 and a white 2/2 human soldier that gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control, but also you can pay Wooburg to search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, put that card onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. And when we take a look at the chart for Sisay, we are seeing a bit of a rise now that Final Fantasy has arrived, which is full of legendary creatures.
I mean, not just legendary creatures, but just legendary cards left and right. Like, there's just so many things that you would want to have in a Sisay Weatherlight Captain. There's even green-white Legends Matter type of cards that also are in Final Fantasy. So you not only got just a bunch of really cool legends, you got support for Legend Matters type of decks. Like, I know my Shanid deck that I love, that's all about all these characters that I like, that deck got so much love. And so seeing Sisay Weatherlight Captain, which is probably the most popular legendary deck out there, it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, Sisay was like the 36th most built commander per month last September, but it fell all the way down to like the 118th most built commander back in January. And now, as June hit and as July hit, as it was moving into that Final Fantasy area, it's been rising back up to rank 62 and climbing. So all of those legends are really reinvigorating this one and putting a bunch more attention onto the map for it.
Well, and it makes so much sense too, if you think about it. If you don't want to have to choose which your favorite character is, man, I want to put this person in a deck, but also want this character in a deck. Sisay just lets you put them all in the same deck. And so that's just satisfying everybody's need to play all their favorite characters right next to each other, even though if they don't necessarily have the right color identity to do that. I know Final Fantasy 15 selfishly has that problem. I want the bros in one deck, and I can't really do that unless it's Sisay Weatherlight Captain.
Yeah, that's a really good point. She's a good option for even just a flavor deck, in addition to all of the legendary synergies that you mentioned are also in the set. Yeah. Just having a nice home for a flavor deck is also a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
But crucially, this is not the only commander who is trending back upwards because of Final Fantasy-related shenanigans. We can also see that Inala Archmage Ritualist has been experiencing an uptick as a result of the Final Fantasy set as well. Inala, for those who may not remember, is one of the Eminence commanders, a Grixis wizard, 5 mana, 4/5. Whenever another non-token wizard enters the battlefield under your control, with Eminence, Inala can activate this ability. Even from the command zone, you can pay 1 mana to make a temporary token copy of it. The token will gain haste, and then you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, and you can tap 5 untapped wizards you control when she is on the battlefield to have target player lose 7 life.
Well, and this one's super interesting too, because this one pretty much spiked on the back of Final Fantasy just because of all the wizard support, I'm guessing. And Inala, it's not like it's a super unpopular commander. It was always lingering kind of in the top 200, maybe 150 or so. It had a really good month, something cool. But seeing it spike this hard, and Inala, to me, I totally forgot what Inala Archmage Ritualist even did. So it's really cool seeing that, oh yeah, Inala gets a lot of really cool new toys with stuff like Kuja and the Black Waltz and all these black and red wizards that you're getting support for in Final Fantasy.
Yeah, last August, she was like the 194th most built commander that month. And she like averaged for the next, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, like being at roughly the 170th or so. But then over just this past month, she's risen up to rank number 84 most built per month. So yeah, all of those wizard tokens and things, and especially as you mentioned, Matt, Kuja, the back half of Kuja is going to double all of the damage that your wizards are dealing. So some pretty interesting support for that creature type that kind of, to me, a little bit came out of nowhere. I also had not thought too much of Inala, but here she is really making room for herself once again.
Yeah, well, and there is a little bit of a non-bow too. I hope people aren't expecting, the backside of Kuja, which doubles the damage. Well, keep in mind, Inala's ability that when you tap those 5 wizards, that is target player loses 7 life. It is not damage. So remember that. It's not going to double that damage. But there's all sorts of different wizards, like even these random commons and uncommons, like Mysidian Elder that enters the battlefield, makes a 0/1 wizard. Well, that's 2 wizards on the battlefield. And that's just going to fuel all these things that are going on with Inala. There's a lot of really fun things you can be doing. I'm glad to see this getting a resurgence.
Yeah, I think the token density just helps you actually get to her final bit there more regularly. And even if Kuja isn't going to double the life loss, I'm excited for it to double the damage from all of those temporary tokens that she's making. So there are a bunch of little tiny synergies that you can pick up here and there that really have reinvigorated her and given her a breath of fresh life, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so the last commander, Joey, I'm talking about this one.
No, you would.
Because it's one of my favorite characters from Lord of the Rings. It's also one of my favorite decks. It's Tom Bombadil getting an extra bit of love. And Tom Bombadil, when it was first released, was incredibly popular. It was number 3 deck for a long time. Yeah. And it's kind of waned a little bit just because, we don't get sagas very often. That's just not a card type we get a lot of attention for. But Final Fantasy brought back sagas, and I'm so excited for it. And Tom is seeing a really, really fun little resurgence. Being, just last month, number 21 in June.
Yeah, it was down at like number 110 or so last November, and now it's back up to number 21 most built of the past month. Like, what a spike. And yeah, it's easy to see all of those sagas from Final Fantasy, the new saga creatures. Matt, I know that your deck has been invigorated by this set, and that is clearly the case for so many players out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards that I have to go through and reevaluate. And it's been fun too, because Saga's just as such a narrow card type that we don't get very often. It's really easy for these decks to stagnate out and people kind of lose attention for them.
Right.
And so people are going through and building them again, updating them. And with Tom's ability to just keep cranking through your deck and getting all these more sagas going on, stuff like Terra Magical Adept, the backside of that card with the saga that gives you 10 mana that just gets to cast even more sagas from your hands. Like this deck, it got so much love. It's going to be so much fun. I'm really, really excited to see what people start cooking again with Tom Bombadil.
And it's, as you were mentioning there, looking over its graph, we did see interest waning a little bit because there's not as much support for these things over time. We also did start to see a little bit of extra competition for it. Narcy Fablesinger came out a short time ago, which was another potential home for all of those saga decks because that was an Obzon commander that also cares about sagas. There's sometimes that potential where when we get a new influx of stuff, which Final Fantasy also did have that, the Terra that you mentioned, there was the Garnet commander that also cares about sagas. They are branching into even more and more legendary creatures that care about sagas. And that won't always tear a commander down. Sometimes it will just bolster it all over again, because even though there are new homes for sagas, there's also a whole bunch of extra support for the thing that already existed here, that in that case being Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being 5 colors, we always will see if you have a 5 color option to support any given strategy, the 5 color version is going to be by default almost, just because players love having access to all 5 colors. It's going to be the most popular version of that. And so, yes, there is a little bit of competition for saga decks, but having a 5 color option in my mind means Tom Bombadil is always going to be the most popular unless you make something that is just clearly far and away way more powerful than what you can be doing with Tom Bombadil. And honestly, this is another one of those situations where I hope they don't power creep Tom away from being the most popular or the most powerful version of that.
Yeah.
Because that just means there's more problems attached to it than, we have a popular thing and now we have another popular thing. That's power creep in an unhealthy way, I think.
Yeah, I'm very much with you here. I like this home for the sagas. I hope that it does not get power crept. I like seeing friendly competition amongst this category rather than cutthroat competition amongst all of those new commanders. And so far, I think that is what we're seeing and what we are seeing reflected in these numbers as well.
Yeah.
So, Matt, those are some commanders that we're seeing where it's pretty easy to identify that the reason these older commanders are making a bit of a comeback is because of some Final Fantasy stuff. But we also have a couple of other commanders that are trending that are not just because of Final Fantasy. There's a couple of other reasons why they might be trending, and we'll get into that in the latter half of the show. But for now, I think we're going to pause to challenge some stats, because there's so much data on EDHREC that we don't always agree with, so let's get into challenging that data. This episode is brought to you by Archidekt, the very best commander deck building website. We house all of our decks on Archidekt, which you can find linked in all of our episodes, or go to archidekt.com/EDHRECast. And by now, you've probably heard of my favorite feature on Archidekt, dragging and dropping directly from Scryfall or EDHREC right into your deck list, saving you tons of time on typing out your card choices when you're updating your list. And you probably also know that Archidekt's playtester is the very best in the biz, smoothly starting each new turn with a swift draw and untap, easily grouping and tapping things en masse if you need it, making searches and scries super simple, proliferating a bunch of counters with just one click of a button, and more. But did you also know about its playtester logs feature? Archidekt can track stats during your playtests, noting such data as your number of cards drawn each turn or number of mana producers played each turn, so you can see how often you're hitting your land drops or how many extra cards that you draw, and on what turns you're most likely to start drawing extra cards. I just playtested a +1 counters deck to see how much total power it could accrue on the field, and Archidekt tracked for me that I got up to 48 power by turn 6. Such easy access to a detailed recap of your playtests can help you get in tune with how your deck really works, or help you locate its weak spots, and all those little edges and extra bits of knowledge could make all the difference to make you more successful at your next game night. Check out our decks at archidekt.com/EDHRECast, that's ARCHIDEKT.com/EDHRECast, and thanks again to Archidekt for constantly innovating and for sponsoring the show.
Well, my challenge this week actually comes from a listener. So Douglas Power sent us an email, which you all can do as well, edhrecast@gmail.com, and had a really, really good challenge for one of the new Final Fantasy commanders. It is Golbez Crystal Collector, which is the new blue and black commander that's a 1/4 human wizard that says whenever an artifact you control enters, surveil one, and at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more artifacts, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. And so Doug had a really, really good suggestion. It isn't an artifact directly, but it does capitalize with Golbez's ability to surveil one whenever an artifact you control enters, because you're going to be doing that a lot whenever you have enough support for it. So Doug's email said, the deck is filled with artifact creatures. A card that I found does a lot of damage, incidentally, is Polluted Cistern, often dealing 2 damage to each opponent whenever you surveil an artifact creature. And for those of you who don't remember, Polluted Cistern came out from Duskmourn. It's one of those room enchantment cards, but Polluted Cistern is 1 and a black to unlock and says whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library, each opponent loses 1 life for each card type among those cards. Say 5 artifacts enter the battlefield, that triggers Golbez 5 times. So if you surveil 5 individual times, you have a chance to get a lot of triggers with Polluted Cistern. This damage is going to add up super fast. And like Doug's email goes on to say, the card is usually gated by the 1 or more clause, but given each artifact entering causes a separate surveil trigger, this can pump out a ton of damage and is only in 26 of the nearly 2,500 Golbez Crystal Collector decks. Well, Doug, since your email, there's almost 3,000 Golbez Crystal Collector decks out there. Golbez is turning out to be, relatively popular out there, and that Polluted Cistern card is still not showing up on the page at all. So I love this challenge because it's super easy to just get all these incidental triggers on Golbez, and it's going to trigger just off of everything. You're at least going to hit them for 1 because you're surveilling every time you put something into your graveyard. You're going to nug them for at least 1. And being able to maximize that with all these different creature types, all these artifacts, it adds up so fast. So I absolutely love this challenge, Doug. This is a great challenge. So good job finding just a really, really cool synergy to capitalize off what Golbez is doing.
Yeah, the number of artifact creatures that will be in that deck so that some of those cards will hit for 2. Polluted Cistern is one of my favorite cards in my winter deck. I adore that card so much. It is such a powerful card. Great challenge. I would love to see it more in that list. Well, Matt, I'm going to move to my challenge here, and the challenge that I've got is a card that it turns out you have quite a lot of affection for, the card Blitz Ball from Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I love Blitz Ball. It's one of my favorite mini games in all of Final Fantasy.
Well, here
and the card too. The card's great too.
Well, yeah, so like talking about the actual card, it's a 3-mana artifact, just a common from the Final Fantasy set. It taps to add 1 mana of any color, so 3-mana mana rock. What other spice does it have to really intrigue you? The spice is very spicy. It has the ability where you can tap and sacrifice Blitz Ball to draw 2 cards, but you can only activate it if an opponent was dealt combat damage by a legendary creature this turn. Seems like it might be a little bit of a hurdle here and there, but, oh man, there's a wording on this that I think is very, very important. It doesn't say a legendary creature you control, just any legendary creature.
Yep.
So I would like to submit that this card needs to appear in a whole lot more goad decks out there, Karazakar, Furkrag, whatever, because those decks are forcing your opponent's creatures to attack each other, probably primarily including the creature they're most likely to have in play being their commander. So you're forcing legendary creatures to hit, meaning Blitz Ball will have activation opportunities out the wazoo. This is a great card to cash in a little bit later in the game when you've got your plan underway and need a little bit more gas. As 3-mana mana rocks go, this one seems so bespoke to that particular strategy that I think it needs to appear in a whole lot more of those types of decks.
I have a Squall Seed Mercenary deck, and drawing 4 cards a turn with Blitz Ball is a lot of fun because I get to bring it back from the first strike damage, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards, and then double strike damage. Blitz Ball has a lot of really fun synergies, and for being just a lowly common, this deck does, or this card, I should say, does a ton of really fun things.
Yeah, its most popular home so far are Final Fantasy stuff, and I'll admit, the Squall synergy, aces.
It's
like
great.
That's really, really dang good. Probably it's like number 1 best home. Love to see it in your deck there. But if you are playing goad, consider it in those decks as well, because it's super spicy to be able to do that. And I just love being able to capitalize off of the fact that it's just whenever any legendary creature hits someone. And I think your opponents will be really surprised when those moments happen.
Yeah, and absolutely. And if you want to pick up any of these cards that we're talking about, you can do so over at Cardsphere. It's just a fantastic way to convert all of your old cards, whether you want to get rid of a bunch of draft chaff and upgrade into some playable cards, or you're trying to downsize your collection. You're trying to get rid of some cards and just cash it in for cash even. You can do that over at Cardsphere. So make sure you check it out. Go to cardsphere.com/EDHRECast. And it's just a fantastic way to get all these cards. So definitely check out Cardsphere.
All right, well, Matt, let's get back into our topic here, talking about some of these commanders that are trending right now. They're experiencing a comeback for some reason. We talked about some commanders where it was pretty obvious to see that the reason that they were having that comeback moment was because of Final Fantasy stuff specifically. But now we've got 3 others that we want to talk about here, where we can't say that it's because of Final Fantasy that they're trending. There's some other reason going on, and let's figure out what those reasons are. Our next commander here that is spiking up in the data is Ovika the Enigma Goliath, a familiar commander to you. This is one that I believe you also have history playing quite a lot.
I did. So I built this one. I've had a deck that was in flux for a long time. That was some sort of is it tokens strategy. And I switched to Ovika Enigma Goliath pretty quickly because it just did everything that I wanted to do. It allowed me to power up into these big 6 and 7 mana spells and make a bunch of goblins in the process. So I love Ovika. It was a really, really fun deck. And I'm very glad to see that this commander's seeing a resurgence lately.
Yeah, Ovika is the 7-mana 6/6 Phyrexian Nightmare in Is It colors. It's flying, it's got Ward 3, and you have to pay 3 life to target it. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create X 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is the mana value of that spell, and those tokens gain haste until end of turn. That is quite a lot of mana to pay, but also quite a lot of tokens that you're going to be making off of it. This one had the glow up of all glow ups, really. It was like the 460th most built commander per month just this last October, but it's actually been shooting up to now the number 157 most built commanders just as of January, and it's been holding strong ever since then.
Yeah, I think this is a huge, huge example of the power that a reprint into a big set, and just even after a couple years even, makes when it comes to just people knowing about this given commander. Because I would say the game is growing faster than ever before. And so commanders that were just printed even a few sets ago are pretty much forgotten by so many players, and just having a readily accessible reprint into a big and popular set that Foundations was, that does wonders for bringing a commander like this back into the forefront of a lot of players' minds, and just gives exposure to folks out there who weren't playing even back when this first set was first played out.
Yeah, we had an episode a long while back about the power of reprints, and frankly, we could put this data into that episode if we wanted to, where it can just activate so much more interest by making a card more accessible, showing off to more players the cool things that a legend like that can do. And I think also, as you mentioned, it did get that reprint in the Foundation set. It probably also doesn't hurt that the Foundation set had a nice little bit of extra goblin synergy in it too, and Ovika makes goblins, so if you did want to build a specifically goblin dedicated deck, this was another great home for all of those other cards that you were opening around that time as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just especially for a commander that I admittedly have a soft spot for, I'm very glad to see that folks are rediscovering this commander, rediscovering just how fun it can be to play these types of commanders. So hopefully we have a chance to maybe see some more commanders get their popularity, give them a little injection, little love, and resurrect their chances. Because, I mean, granted, you can't reprint everything, but just this is a really good example of how effective a reprint can be when it comes to getting these new players to see the power of some of these commanders, even from a couple sets ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what else are we seeing that's spiking up right now, too?
Well, so we talked a few episodes ago about how Atraxa is no longer the number one commander, and that a dragon deck had taken over with the Dragon. And the reasons that we saw the Dragon get another surge applies to more commanders than just the Dragon. Tiamat is a commander that we've actually seen make a huge step forward in being popular again. It's a 5-color commander, so you have access to every dragon out there in the game, and you're able to tutor up the best ones. This has a lot of things going for it, and there's always going to be dragons that give a little bit of attention back to it. But it had slugged down kind of the 400s almost, basically. But with Dragonstorm that just came back out, we revisited Tarkir, where there's a ton of dragons out there. Tiamat jumped way back up into the game. It peaked out at the number 19 commander back in April, when Tarkir Dragonstorm was released. And this is such a huge jump. Like we talked about, going from 150, like jumping up like 300 spots. It jumped up almost 400 slots. This is an even bigger jump, and didn't even need a reprint to do it.
Yeah, Dragonstorm gave it so much love, reprinting cards like Dragon Tempest, giving us a new Dragon Omniscience in Draco Genesis, giving a bunch of new juicy targets for Tiamat to go out and tutor. As you pointed out, Matt, it wasn't just the Dragon that benefited from Dragonstorm. It is kind of funny to compare the lists here. When we look at Tiamat's surge in popularity and what it's spiking up, as you noted, from like number 390 most built per month to number 19 most built per month, we can compare that to the Dragon's popularity history chart on its EDHREC page, and we do see also a surge, but its graph is ranging in the top 20 section, not all the way down to the 400s or so. So it did get a spike from spot number 10 to spot number 1 compared to the huge mountain that we see on the graph for Tiamat. So it's just neat to see that, a rising tide does lift all ships here, but one ship really, really rose, and that was Tiamat.
Yes. Well, this ship rose so hard and fast that it went from, before Dragonstorm came out, in the past 2 years, it was like 250 or so. But then the surge in popularity puts it all the way up to the number 137 commander in the past 2 years, just because of how strong those past couple months have been for it.
Yeah, Dragon and Miram were already popular and did solidify their popularity, but this one really put Tiamat back onto the map. So good on you, Dragonstorm. What an amazing set, and I'm glad that you gave love to a bunch of dragons that people love so much.
Yeah, well, speaking of commanders that people love so much, we're not going to talk about one here. We're going to talk about Brago King Eternal, because nobody loves playing against...
What do you mean?
Nobody loves playing against a Blink deck. It is popular. It's popular, but it's not beloved. It's accepted at best.
Wow, there are 9,190 Brago players out there right now, Matt, who are just staring daggers at you.
And if they could read, they would be very mad right now.
Oh my god. All right, tell us what's going on with Brago.
All right. Well, so Brago King Eternal, everybody. So we're joking a lot here. So that is the Azorius Blink Commander. It's 2, a white and a blue. And then card has been around for forever. 2/4 Spirit Noble with flying. And whenever Brago King Eternal deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So this is all about blinking, getting everything all over the place, and you're just accruing so much value over the course of every single turn because you plan on blinking your entire battlefield every single turn. There's a lot that goes into this, and the reason I'm joking is just because these decks can take so long to resolve all their triggers because they're getting a ton of value out of every single combat step.
Yeah, it can be a little bit of a value grind fest for a lot of Blink decks out there. Brago is certainly a culprit of that. It is not uncommon for Blink decks to default to, I guess I'll do an infinite combo situation, of which Brago is more than capable in order to turn all of that value into victory and not have the end of the game last, 7 more rounds or something like that, and rather like actually close the door shut. So a couple of play patterns that can lead to some folks being a little bit more grind their teeth-y about Brago, certainly.
We have some mutual friends too, Joey, that like they play Brago. They've had that deck for forever, and so we say it out of love, kind of.
Kind of, there it is. But yeah, as you're noting here, it was the number 218 most built commander per month back in the month of November. But by February of this year, he'd risen back to the number 73 most built commander per month. And then in March, he crested up to the number 65 most built per month. So it's been a bit of a climb for Brago. And this one actually took me a while to figure out what in the world was going on around February and March that could have driven this much interest back to this old standby of a commander.
It took me a while too. I actually had to read your notes because I saw this commander was on the list and I was like, there's no way. Like, it was around Aether Drift. And so I knew we got Gear Hulks again. And the blue-white Gear Hulk, the Riptide Gear Hulk, is absolutely silly. That is one of the most powerful things that you can be doing, I think, when it comes to Gear Hulks. But even I can't imagine one card gets people paying attention to Brago King Eternal of all commanders, gets that huge jump, like worthy of us talking about it on an episode.
I was also just so confused. I'm like, what is it that could be driving this much interest here? Is it possible that just getting a small number of new spicy targets caused a lot of people who had not updated their list in the past 2 years to get back onto a deck building website and update that list? And that was the surge that we're seeing. That was my initial theory. But instead, it turns out that, Matt, the answer is much, much simpler. Are you familiar with Hatsune Miku?
I am not. I think you just made something up.
Well, I am also not familiar with it, but I do know that Brago got a Hatsune Miku secret layer printing reskinning, and I do believe that that is one of the biggest reasons why we're seeing that bump up around the time of Aether Drift. Yes, there was Gear Hulk, but also there was a new fancy version of this commander that also would drive some interest towards it as well.
I mean, so that makes a lot of sense, I would suppose, because yes, it's an old commander, like an old commander. This came out back in Conspiracy days, which they haven't made a Conspiracy set in forever, but having a fancy new bling version, especially Secret Lair, where people kind of get reinvigorated for something. I mean, we saw how much you can get a huge, shot in the arm when it comes to popularity with Ovika Enigma Goliath, and that was just getting it reprinted into a mainline set. That's without a super fancy version that gets people excited to dust off that Brago deck again. And so, yeah, it's not just a mainline reprinting that can, get people out talking about a commander again. It can be a secret layer, something or other, and that's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, well, and hey, that's actually another episode that we did a while back. The power of reprints and how that can affect the popularity is, again, something that we're seeing echoed here. We'll have that linked in the description if folks want to go and check that episode out too. It is nice to see the ways that these cards can have something reinvigorating them, whether it is from a set that is drawing a whole bunch of new attention, giving you new synergies, or if you finally have just better access to the cards in the first place. These are all good reasons to celebrate the resurgence in popularity for each of these legends.
Yeah, so Joey, are there any sets coming up, or maybe even with Edge of Eternities coming out, is there a commander that you think might be seeing another resurgence that we might be talking about if we did this episode, 3 months from now?
Ooh, great question. So there are all of those new spacecrafts that are coming out, and the Jeskai precon that is coming out is going to care about spacecrafts and getting all of those counters onto those spacecraft in order for them to be permanently crewed and then become able to deal damage and things like that. But the Jeskai precon that's coming out cares a lot about proliferating from a lot of the original cards that we're seeing there. So we did see that Atraxa was unseated from the number 1 spot and replaced by the Ur-Dragon. But it is possible that if she gets enough new proliferating toys, that she might be able to claw her way back up? Question mark? I'm not positive, but she is getting a couple of new toys to play with potentially. So any commander that cares about counters in any form will probably have its eye on the cards from that precon, I would expect.
I'm curious too, because so you mentioned Jeskai, and Atraxa doesn't have red in it, so a lot of the 3-color proliferate tools aren't going to go into Atraxa necessarily. But I do see that line of thought. I'm just going to extend it to there's a lot of land matter stuff that's going to get released. So there could be maybe some renewed love in like Lord Windgrace or some of these land matters, especially in Jund colors. There's a lot of precedent there. And so I could see that being super popular and maybe giving a big old injection of popularity into those strategies. And I know we talked last week, Dana and I talked about some commanders that were going to get some love. I still think any creature with survival is going to get very, very valuable when it comes to end of your decks because of these spacecraft. I mentioned Rip Spawn Hunter last week that has the survival ability, just because with all of these spacecraft things, you want to have them tapped. And while you're tapping things to put counters on your spacecraft, that plays in perfectly with the survival mechanics. So any legend that has that, I think, is the very, very obvious one. But man, I'm really excited, and I want to see more mechanics that we're going to have from the Avatar Last Airbender, from the Spider-Man set, because those two, they're going to be super, super popular. We saw what Final Fantasy did and having that be standard legal. We're going to see that twice before the end of the year. And so there's a lot of cards, a lot of synergies that we're going to have. And Wizards wants those sets to be popular. So it's probably going to be the same thing. We're going to have so many more old commanders to talk about by the end of the year, just because we're getting 2 enormously popular sets.
Yeah, I tell you what, too, when the Avatar set does come out, like a thing that will be reinvigorated and trending is the number of decks that I'm going to build. Like, I've been trying to take more and more of my decks apart over the course of this year.
Same.
But I will not be able to help myself. I have an Earthbender tattoo. Matt, like, I don't care what Toph does, I'm building it. Like, that's kind of my attitude.
Fair. I mean, yeah, it's a good problem to have, though. Like, I had to buy a whole bunch more deck boxes just to fit everything. And I just got done downsizing, and I had to buy more. I downsized, but still had to buy more deck boxes. That's the type of problem Final Fantasy's been for me. So I imagine you're going to be in the same situation when Avatar gets here.
That's really what I mean to highlight, is just like each of these sets does for a bunch of different players out there hit a certain spot where just like, oh, it's not just a certain commander is getting that resurgence. It's not just that these are making a comeback. Some of them do just hit that sweet spot for us to feel reinvigorated as well. And that, I think, is a really nice note for us to end on here when we're looking over all of this data and all of these trending commanders. Noticing the trends within ourselves, more or less, is kind of a nice thing to observe in addition to all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a nice little bow to put on it, Joey. So why don't we let's wrap up and get out of here.
Yeah, let's call this episode to a close. Matt, if folks want to find you online to let you know their thoughts about their favorite trending commanders, where is it that they can find you?
Well, you can find me on pretty much any social media platform, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever, at Mathimus55. That's MATHIMUS55. And don't forget, we are proud to work together with Dragon Shield to bring you some of the best accessories for protecting your cards. Whether you want the best sleeves, you want to create these custom sleeves, all sorts of stuff you can do over with Dragon Shield. So check them out as well.
And you can find me everywhere online, from Instagram to Blue Sky at Joseph M. Schultz. And you can find the cast online at EDHRECast. And of course, if you'd like to get any access to, say, exclusive content or stuff like that, you can support us over at patreon.com/EDHRECast. Listeners, we'll be back at you next week with more data and insights. But until then, remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.